It's time for Focus Forward, sponsored by Invest Grand Bahama. It's Grand Bahama's best talk show, highlighting all of the positive things happening in Freeport.
Look forward to our special guests each week that will tell you about events, activities, and initiatives that are making a remarkable impact on our community.
You'll also hear from local business owners and get a heads up on deals and special promotions. It's time to Focus Forward. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Grand Bahama's Best Talk Show, Focus Forward, sponsored by the Invest Grand Bahama unit of the Grand Bahama Port Authority. My name is Glendia Sweeting, Manager of Quality Assurance at the Grand Bahama Port Authority, and I am so delighted to have you join us today. Last week, we promised you a Hurricane Preparedness Part 2 show. There were so many persons that we needed to have on the show to be able to tell you about exactly what's happening in Grand Bahama, how are we preparing, and things and tips that you can have to be able to help you prepare as well. So today, we needed to do this Part 2 because, again, we have some wonderful folks that are on the show to be able to bring that information for you. Now, I know you're wondering, where's Alex? Everybody is always wondering about Alex. Alex is somewhere around the world again, but hopefully next week she's going to be back with us. And of course, you'll have the opportunity to be able to engage with both her and I once again. But again, thank you so much for joining us on the show, and we are looking forward to having a wonderful discussion. And I just want to jump in really quickly because there's so much good information to be able to share. And in this show, we want to talk with the Grand Bahama Utility Company and some others. But one of the things that people always want to find out about when it comes to post-storm is what's going to happen with the water. So water is a big deal, and we could all agree to that. And of course, today we have joining us here in our studio, Ms. Kyanti Dixon, who is the Wellfield Officer with the Grand Bahama Utility Company, and she plays a very important role in helping to maintain and protect Grand Bahama's water supply systems, along with members of her team. So certainly, we are so delighted to have you, Ms. Dixon. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you. That was a wonderful intro, I might say.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm trying to do my best because Alex didn't join me today.
I understand.
All right, Ms. Dixon, so let's just get into the conversation. Last week, we spoke with Sanitation Services. Mm-hmm. We spoke with the Bahamas Red Cross Society, Grand Bahama Port Authority Building and Development, and Lucaya Service Company. Mm-hmm. So we got lots of information from them. Mm-hmm. But when we start to talk about water, particularly because we've come from seeing perhaps one of the biggest windstorms in the case of Matthew, and then of course one of the biggest water storms in the case of Dorian. And during Dorian, water was a big deal for many reasons, obviously. And so because water is literally just a necessity in life, we need it. We need it for many things. So when we think about the Grand Bahama Utility Company, it is always very important for residents to ask questions and to be given the proper information around our water utility. So tell me, what are some of the specific steps that the utility company has taken to ensure that our infrastructure is ready as we get into this hurricane preparedness season?
Well, the utilities company invests a lot in preparing for hurricane seasons, and we do it all throughout the year as opposed to just waiting for June 1st to just jump right in and say, okay, now we need to jump on it because we are a hurricane-prone island. So we have ways in which, with many of those people you spoke about, Sanitation Services, Grand Bahama Power Company, Building and Development, we have regular meetings, and we have a memorandum of understanding with these corporations that in the event of an emergency, we hit the ground running, and we have plans and preparations ahead of time. So aside from that, we also have memorandums of understanding with our licensees, our suppliers, a lot of our contractors that we work with, so that they know in the event of a storm that we are going to call them and we're going to say, hey, we need your help to provide the residents with water as soon as possible, as safely as possible. So that's just one of the proactive ways the Grand Bahama Utilities Company gets ahead of things, ahead of time, and being proactive instead of reactive.
Well, that's definitely good to know, because now I'm hearing that you have these relationships, you have partnerships, you have memorandums of understanding. So if a storm happens, you already have that agreement with a particular vendor to be able to provide certain services. What about relationships with organizations like NEMA and other emergency type organizations? Are there relationships there as well?
Well, I think NEMA goes by DRMA now, the Disaster Risk Management Authority, and we do have a close-knit relationship with them, whereas we have monthly meetings with them just so that everybody knows what to do in the event of a hurricane or a storm. We meet on a monthly basis along with a lot of those Port Authority household and stakeholders, and everybody that provides services for on the ground. It's a big community. We have the Red Cross, the police officers. Everybody's there so that everybody on the island is aware of what to expect and what to do in the event. Like you said, Hurricane Dorian was a catastrophe. Like, it was horrible, and so we need to keep these programs in place, and we need to keep contact and constant communication just for the event of these things happening.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the utility company's infrastructure. One of the things that we heard many years ago was that the utility company was investing in a reverse osmosis system, particularly after Dorian. Tell us a little bit about some of the investments that the utility has made in order to ensure that if we have a storm, we are better serviced as a community.
Well, the Grand Bahama Utilities Company actually invested more than $5 million into a state-of-the-art reverse osmosis systems. We've also invested in gen sets and generators, more equipment for better monitoring and control of our systems. And with this reverse osmosis system, this is quite necessary. As you know, after Hurricane Dorian, the waters was the salt water into the well fields was crazy, and the water was so salty that a lot of our silverware were rusting, a lot of our water heaters went bad. The water was just not potable and not usable at the time. It wasn't meeting World Health Organizational standards, which led to us making this big investment for the residents of Grand Bahama to actually be able to have access to this necessity, like you said. And one of our latest investments actually this year was investing in putting a gen set in McLean's Town, so that even if water disruptions happen to our distribution systems through power outages, that the residents are still able to have access to water as a means from the Grand Bahama Utilities Company. So big investments happened over the years as a result.
Huge investments.
Yes.
And I think sometimes when we talk about Freeport, we talk about the utility company, we forget to talk about those other areas in Grand Bahama,
Right.
including McLean's Town, going through Hawksbill and going all the way 8 Mile Rock straight up to West End. So the role of the utility company really is to be able to supply water across the island of Grand Bahama, which is important. So my question then is, if in fact in the unlikely event we do have a storm, what is the plan for the utility company to ensure that water is going to be available for persons straight across the island?
Well, you know, the timeline based on how we can minimize downtime is based on severity of the storm. But we do have things in place. Like I said, we have those gen sets that we invested in for in case of power outages. We have a varying ways. But in the unlikely event that all of these means to us is not possible, we also have provisions for having TENS and setting up local water depots with tanks that we have allocated just for that, to store potable water in the unlikelihood of a big storm. You know what I mean? So.
Okay, so we've seen that, and we saw that after Dorian. We
Right.
saw those portable water stations in strategic areas for
Right.
everybody to be able to take advantage of. So that is something else that the utility may be looking at. I know that there was also some discussions at one point in terms of the reverse osmosis system. Is there an opportunity, let's say, and we're going to talk to Mr. Tynes a little bit later on from meteorology, but let's say that we know that the storm is coming from a particular location or area. Is there an opportunity to perhaps move the RO system just to be able to ensure that we're better servicing and providing a better distribution point?
Yeah, so basically, we considered all that in mind when investing in these reverse osmosis systems. These systems are completely mobile and able to be moved from place to place. And a part of our hurricane preparedness memorandums within our team, we have provisions that if a storm happens, where they must be placed, where they must be stored, how to move them, where on the island that they can be placed to conserve them and make sure that they are safe in the event of a hurricane. So they are completely mobile, and the operators and everybody is aware of what to do in the event of a storm and where to put them. And it's a very rigorous process, but it's necessary.
It's necessary.
Yes.
And that's something that we didn't have before Dorian,
Right.
certainly. And so that's one of those things that we would have learned to be able to build back better in some cases, particularly as it relates to utility. Now, let's talk a little bit about households and businesses and just having water in general. In preparation for the storm, everybody likes to have some gallons of water or 5 gallons filled and that sort of thing. What are some of the tips that you can give residents that are watching now? How much water should they be storing?
Right.
How should they store the water? What can they use it for? Things like that. Can you give us some tips?
Like I said, Grandmama is no stranger to storms, hurricanes, and that's unfortunate. So we have an idea of what to do just without the GBUC telling you. But what I can advise is that residents should at least store up to at least 3 days worth of drinking water and some additional water for sanitation purposes. It's always good to be prepared in the likelihood, but because also we don't know what infrastructure may be damaged, how long it'll take to. It can take 2 days, it can take 2 weeks in order for us to get our distribution system fully operational. And so during that time, while giving us grace to actually operate and do our jobs, it's important that residents understand that you also have to be prepared on your side. Like I said, Grand Bahama is no stranger to hurricanes. And so in this event, we encourage you to use sanitized bottles and store as much as you can and be as prepared as you can.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. Now, I know one of the key things that was really important as well after a storm was being able to get information. A lot of people didn't really say, hey, let me follow this particular social media site or let me go here to get my information. I believe most people were trying to just go with the meteorologist and say, hey, let's just see what's happening with the storm. But in order to hear from the Grand Bahama Utility Company, how can people get information from you before, possibly during, or after the storm?
Well, before, during, and after the storm, the Grand Bahama Utilities Company has a variety of ways in order to reach the public and communicate. It's important to communicate effectively for public health and safety. And so we tell everybody, do not rely on a sole singular source for your information because there could be disruptions. So we have means in terms of local radio, satellite radio, social media, and regular updates to our websites before, during, and after storm. And we encourage the public to take advantage of all these means in which we communicate so that you are effectively informed on what's happening and the quality of your water and what we are doing as a company and how soon you can expect a bounce back and things like that in terms of that.
So what does it look like for the utility company after a storm? How do you make water readily available, that supply, that distribution? How do you make that readily available in order of priority?
Right. So for the utilities company, like I said, we don't plan for hurricanes as they come, we plan way ahead. Every member in our team is well aware of what they're responsible for in the event of a hurricane. We have these personal in-room meetings for everybody so that they are aware of what to expect and what they are expected to do on the island. So what we do is, as we wait for the all clear by the government and the officials, we then after that mobilize and attack things, like you said, in priority. We have these memorandums of understanding with sanitation and GB Power, and with these teams that we localize in different areas, they then survey and determine, okay, we need to get this done now, we need to get that done now, and they go into the well fields, they do their inspection, they do water quality testing. It's a means of not just providing you with water, but providing you with safe water and ensuring that public safety and our team safety is also a matter. You know, you have a lot of down wires, a lot of down poles, and we just have to make sure that our team is in a good shape so that we can give you what you need.
Now, you just talked about safe water, and I have to stick a pin right there because I also remember after Hurricane Dorian, I also heard a lot of talk about wells and people using wells. And I always get a little eerie because I'm thinking, okay, so this is post a storm, GB Utility needs to do what they need to do, and if these folks have access to wells, what does that mean for other people having to try to use some of that same water? What advice would you give to persons, particularly those approved for that sort of thing? What kind of advice would you give to them to ensure that they're not causing any further contamination to the system as you guys begin to work to have safe distribution water coming back up?
Well, what I can give to the residents and private well owners is that if your well has been affected by flooding, flood water has got in it, if it's been submerged, you must treat that well as though it is contaminated, as though it can get you sick, because you don't want to be affecting your health, and you want to avoid waterborne illnesses. So we very much advise that those private well owners, you get your well tested, you disinfect if you need it, you send it to laboratory testing. You don't want to just use that water and say, well, I'm just using it to brush my teeth. I'm just using it to bathe. Because you can come in contact with these things, whether you're drinking it or not. The fact that you're using it and you're coming in contact with it, that means you can potentially be sick by it. And you don't want to just assume that, well, my water was good before, my water should be good now, because that's what we do. We do a lot of testing of our well fields, individual well fields, very rigorous testing. And we don't just do it for storms, we do it on a daily basis, just to ensure that public health and everything is considered before distributing this water. So I would advise public, assume that your well is contaminated before using your well. Go through the right means and the right steps and the right processes to confirm that your well is not contaminated by any microorganisms, any bacterium, because you don't want to come from a storm and then get sick.
Right. You survive one thing and then end up
Yeah.
in another situation.
Yeah.
Yes, I get it. I understand.
Yeah.
All right, well, we have to wrap up the segment. You've given so much good information, but just give me some final thoughts. Anything that GBUC would like the public to know, or anything that you wish to share about the utility company?
Well, some final thoughts is, like I say, GBUC is actively working daily to provide the public with safe, potable water. We have faced so many storms in the past and we have bounced back from it. And we do our service just to serve the community, because we are here to serve you. And so I say, take some of the tips and the tricks that I told you today. It's important to consider your health, your family's health, and to be prepared, because we're no strangers to these big, colossal storms, or just these storms in general. So that's what I'd say.
Thank you so much for sharing with us, Ms. Dixon. We really appreciate you, Wellfield Officer at the Grand Bahama Utility Company, and certainly for the very first time here on the Focus Forward Show, and we're hoping that we will be able to see you again and share some more time with you so that we can learn more about what's happening at the utility company. I have so much more questions. I want to talk about smart meters and all these other things that you guys are doing, but there's just not enough time.
Right.
But we're going to look at scheduling another show and see how we can be able to include the utility company and learn more about what they're doing with our water service here in Grand Bahama. Right. Listen, we have so much more to come. So we've had the Grand Bahama Utility Company, and we want to go on and have some more conversations and speak with some of these key people from around the island. So we'll be right back right after this.
Welcome to Freeport, the reawakened, the reimagined, the rebirth, the Renaissance capital of the Bahamas. Over $1.5 billion in investments. Marinas, cruise ports, downtown revitalization, residential developments. We're putting the city on the map. Want to know more? Just log on. Your future is only a click away.
Hi everyone, and welcome back. We're here on Focus Forward having our part 2 of the Hurricane Preparedness show. We just spoke with the Grand Bahama Utility Company in the person of Kyanti Dixon, and we're so excited to be able to speak to some key persons from the Meteorology Department and also the Disaster Manager. So we want to get back into the conversation, and I want you to take some notes. A lot of times we plan, we prepare, we do our own things, but there are certain things that sometimes you forget, or some new things that you may need to know, and this is what the show is all about. We bring you the experts, we bring you the people that are helping the community to prepare so that we can all plan and prepare together. And so we want to get into the discussion, and I'm so excited to have these folks joining me today. Ms. Tami Mitchell, who is the Disaster Manager for the Ministry for Grand Bahama, and she is a committee member for the Disaster Risk Management Consultative Committee. Very long title. That means that they got us planned and prepared for. Ms. Mitchell, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And we're also very happy to welcome back to the show Mr. Tranard Tynes, who is the Senior Meteorologist and Officer in Charge at the Freeport office. Thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be here.
We really depend heavily on both of you guys and the teams that you work along with here in Grand Bahama. We know the history of Grand Bahama, we know the history of hurricanes, but we also know that you guys also do a really good job in keeping us prepared. So if I can just jump into the conversation with you, Ms. Mitchell, just tell me, what are some of the important things that residents need to do to prepare when we talk about a hurricane threat to Grand Bahama?
Okay, well, first off, let me say with residents, the main thing that you should have is actually a plan. Have a plan of action in place for your families as well as your businesses. And within that plan, it should include the do's and the don'ts, your preparation modes, and what you're going to do in the event you have to evacuate your home or even take shelter on a different island. So you need to have all of those things in place. A lot of people, we say this to them every year, but then when you really look at it, are they really heeding to what it is they need to do? We heard a lot about Dorian, which has now become the poster child for the Bahamas. Take lessons from that and just look around. You begin to look around your homes, begin to check your plan, make sure that you have all your things in motion so that if you have to do anything, you're ready to go, and test your plan with your families. Make sure the kids know what to do. Make sure hubby knows what to do. Make sure you know what to do in the event you have to activate that plan.
So when we talk about having a plan, and I like that you said that, because sometimes we have it a pair, right? But we don't necessarily have something written to remember everything, or have some means of ensuring that you know exactly what to do when. And then you also said something very interesting: make sure that your family knows what to do in the plan. So I just want you to break that down for a second. When we talk about a plan, we talk about having your water, your necessary medications. Tell us a little bit more specifically about some of the things that we can add into that plan.
Sure. So along with what you're talking about, with having the perishable and non-perishable items, you also want to have emergency contact information. You mentioned about medication. You also want to have a plan in place for your pets. And when we're talking about having a plan in place even for your home, now is the time that person should be walking around your homes, checking the condition of your home to see if it would be safe for you to actually stay there if a hurricane is threatening the island. We also want you to take heed of when we talk about having contact information, who is the person that we or even another family member could contact you if you get displaced and your family doesn't know where you are. All of this is information you should have in that plan. Look at your home, the electrical systems. You mentioned, you were talking with Ms. Dixon earlier, the water system. Check all of those things to see that they are actually functioning. And this is where now, if you have issues, you can address them before the threat. Have the plan in place, especially with your medication. We know our hospital had suffered a lot during Dorian, but now you would know the amount of medication you should have on hand. I personally would go for 2 weeks or more because you never know. And then just have everything ready. And when I say about testing it, you could even turn it into a game for your children. Ask them what they know, because you'll be surprised that the children are more receptive in learning and understanding what has to be done in an emergency situation. Ask them about what do they think they need to have in their bags. We call it a to-go bag, where you have your change of clothes, they could have their games, they could have things that they would like to do if they have to evacuate their home. Make sure they're a part of the process.
Okay. Now, how does the ministry coordinate disaster preparedness and response efforts across the island of Grand Bahama?
Okay, well, my role at the Ministry for Grand Bahama, I'm the disaster manager, and I'm also a member of the Disaster Risk Management Consultative Committee, which is the DRM Authority's arm. As the manager for the Ministry for Grand Bahama, I'm considered the liaison person for all of the government departments on the island, who, if I'm called upon to assist them with emergency preparedness, with mitigation, with response efforts as it relates to anything disaster related on the island. So it's not just hurricanes that we focus on. We see that right now we're faced with fires, a bushfire that's been burning for days. It could be a flooding, it could be any incident. Those are the things that I would be called upon to assist the government departments as well as the private sector with their emergency response. The airport company just had a drill recently. I was a part of that process as well. So those are the things that I currently do, and as well as assisting other islands in the Bahamas as well.
So what are some of the support systems that are available for vulnerable residents? When we think about the seniors, people with disabilities, or families with young children, when it comes to a hurricane emergency, are there any systems in place to be able to support them?
Well, right now, of course, we know we have the special needs shelter, which is still at Crisis King. That's where our critical care patients will go. Families with vulnerable persons, we ask them, it's a part of their plan to determine what at what level does this person is going to need assistance, and then they have to make that plan available. There isn't any special needs shelter where it's specifically for disabled, but that could be something that be considered in the future, because we know the island itself, our shelters are basically churches and the schools. So we don't have anything that's specific, but we encourage family members, if what they need, what their needs are, plan accordingly so that you can assist them best as possible.
And how can residents stay informed? You have a lot of information and a lot of things that your organization would normally do. How can residents stay informed and get accurate updates? I'm guessing before and perhaps after the storm, if not during as well.
Yeah, well, definitely we rely heavily on the media houses, and that's, of course, the ZNS, all of the stations that are here in Grand Bahama, Mix 102, the Power 104, all of those, we rely on them to keep our residents informed. And we also rely on social media, but we want people to understand that when you're sharing social media posts, make sure it is credible. Don't just pick up a post and share it and say, well, I'm going to share it, because we find, and we've seen this in our field, where people take pieces of the Met Office information and forget to share the rest. So you're taking the part that is going to create hysteria. And then now it'll be up to Tranard to tell the people that ain't so.
Right.
They forgot the most important part of the message. So we want to make sure that persons know to rely on credible sources. Our Disaster Risk Management Consultative Committee also, as Ms. Dixon mentioned, has a core group of persons who attend regular monthly meetings, and that's every last Monday in the month at 4 p.m. where we get together, we discuss our plans of action, we provide updates, and we share information so that we know everybody is doing something or how everybody's doing. We also have WhatsApp groups throughout the island and also throughout the country where we also share emergency information or any messages that we deem necessary for persons. And going back to the disabled list, every year, between the Public Hospital Authority, Grand Bahama Health Services, and also local government and everybody else, we actually have a database of seniors and disabled. So we know exactly where they are on the island, what are their needs, so that in the event we have to go and evacuate them, we have that information readily available, whether we need to get an ambulance or they can go in a bus or a truck. We know what is needed to get to those disabled persons. And we're even going a little further too, where through local government and also with the beautiful Grand Bahama teams, we're going to be trying to go to some of those senior homes and see if they need any assistance and maybe clearing their yard. But it's going to take a team effort, and it's always been a team effort in terms of emergency preparedness and response for not just Grand Bahama, but for the entire Bahamas.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ms. Mitchell, and we're going to swing back to you, but we want to come over to Mr. Tynes. Mr. Tynes, hurricane season is now underway, and you are perhaps one of the most popular people when it comes to getting information, because everybody is always sitting on pins and needles wondering, okay, what is happening out there? What's truly happening? Right. With the onset of social media, people get information from all over the place. But to Ms. Mitchell's point, it's good to have it from a credible source, right, such as yourself. So what are some of the current forecasts that residents of Grand Bahama can expect based on what you know at this time?
Basically, we always doing hurricane updates. Basically, our first forecast starts in December, right after hurricane season ends in November. The National Hurricane Center sends out a forecast at the beginning. For our beginning, it would be December, but then they update it just prior to. So the latest forecast came out just in May, just before we start the official hurricane season, which is June 1st. And it said that we were looking for a more quieter season than previous seasons we had in 2024 and 2024 and 2025. And that's because we are looking for an El Nino year. And now we are looking, they are saying certain things as so as we're looking at a super El Nino. But let's not get ahead of ourselves with that. But we're going into an El Nino session. The reason being, when you hear certain things like El Nino and La Nina and all, it's a neutral, we basically are talking about how our atmosphere is corresponding with the Pacific side, because whatever happens in the Pacific happens in the is a separate thing happens in the Atlantic. So the Pacific side is going to be very active this year, but on the Atlantic side we are more quiet on our side. So what happens is in an El Nino year, any storms that traveling or traversing across the Atlantic basin from Africa, we anticipate that it's going to run into areas that is not favorable for intense and rapid intensification. That's not saying that we're not going to have anything, but it's just stating that once it gets into our area, the upper level winds are not conducive for this storm to be a major storm or fast growing storm.
Okay, so what are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about hurricanes and tropical systems? I know you guys are the experts, right? But we usually talk amongst ourselves in the community. And perhaps we may be sharing information that's not correct amongst each other. What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions, the things that people believe that may not necessarily be the case as it relates to hurricanes and storms?
Well, the first misconception is that they believe that any hurricane that comes out is going to be a major catastrophe. The hurricanes itself have different stages. You go from category 1 to category 5. But before they get to even to a category status, it starts off as a tropical wave, or it starts off as a very small low pressure system, which we call in our field the embryo of what a hurricane may become, but not necessary. Right now, we have about 4 tropical waves that is out in the Atlantic basin right now, but none of them are expected to become anything. They just traverse from Africa straight across the Atlantic, going west, then they go across the Caribbean Sea, then they end up in somewhere in Central America, and then sometimes they move into the Pacific side. But the only thing they basically do is bring rainfall for those areas that they pass through. But then if they reach or they go into an area where the water is very conducive or is ripe, what we call a ripe area, then they'll start to form and become a depression. Like we have one right now that is in in Central America right now. But they were thinking that was going to be our very first thing, but it's only a tropical depression right now. But what it's doing is bringing a lot of rainfall in that area. But the biggest misconception is that persons believe that once they hear something is brewing or it's happening, they start to get panicky and they start to get excited and stuff like that. Because we had just before the hurricane season started, there were reports saying that we were having a tropical storm or some tropical system coming out of the Caribbean Sea. And this was just before hurricane season. They were anticipating plenty rainfall and all that stuff. And a lot of people was like, oh, we already have something starting already, but that's not the case. The problem was that we did have a low pressure system, which was a part of an upper level low system that was bringing rainfall in that area. But person was saying that there was a tropical system, but it wasn't. So when I tell people, be careful when persons trying to be ahead of the game and they report certain things, because we have all kinds of stuff out there right now called AI and all that stuff now.
Right.
But a lot of people say, oh, they trust AI. But the problem is, AI only operates depending on what you ask them or what you put in the system, which is the human factor. Which it'd be even more better if it comes from an expert that puts that information in. So you have to be very careful to try eliminate the human factor, which is us in the Bahamas Department of Meteorology. Also, another factor that I run into a lot of the people believe that we get our information from the United States.
Some of us do believe that.
Yeah, but that's a big misconception.
And social media helps with that train of thought as well.
But the thing is, we have a staff in the Bahamas of roughly about 40 members. Every one of us are qualified persons because we have a rigorous training program that we have to go through before we could even sit down and provide any weather information to the public. And we collaborate with the United States, we collaborate with Cuba, we collaborate with Jamaica, we collaborate with the entire Caribbean because this is our region. So all of us have to put information in. And because the Bahamas is known as the hurricane center, we are looked at as the lead people for hurricane throughout the Caribbean and the United States.
Okay.
So when we have certain things,
that's good to know.
Yeah, absolutely. When we have systems brewing and stuff like that, our director actually goes on phone calls with the Hurricane Center in Miami, and they have extensive meetings and stuff like that when we have anything going on. And the Bahamas is we are one of the leading areas in here that provides information during hurricane season.
Now, going into this hurricane season, sometimes we find that people, they hear these different terms, but they don't really understand hurricane watch, hurricane warning. You hear so many things.
Right.
Tell us the difference between a watch and a warning. When is it that we really need to be ready?
That you should be ready before you even get the first one, right?
Right.
Because we also in the Bahamas, as a matter of fact, the Bahamas was the one that actually broke down the watch and the warning for the region. Because what happens is we used to have very early, we only had the watch and the warning, but we also have an alert. The alert has been, the system is roughly about 3 days out. Just to be, I mean, it's more technical than that, but I can break it down as easy as I could. When we say we have an alert, that means the system is imminent that it could come into our area with roughly about 3 days or 72 hours or so. Then when you have a watch, that means it's much more closer. It's like 36 hours or so. And then when you have a full-blown warning, that means the system is definitely going to be coming in the area. So when you hear an alert, it just tell you, okay, we have something that may come in our area, because there's a lot of stuff that could happen to that system before it reach. So you don't want to get the persons them rally up and excited, but we just want you to know that, okay, this is now when you hear the warning, now definitely you should have everything ready. You should already know what your plan of action should be, and then you should be ready to execute it, because the system could be upon you within 24 hours.
Okay. And finally, just tell us where we can get the information from you. How can we find you before, during, and after the storm to be able to get this information?
Well, we do have a web page, Bahamas Meteorology. That's our website. We're also on Facebook. And we also start, because we have, like I said, we have a lot of young people now that's coming into the service, and a lot of them are computer savvy, and they social media buffs and things, so they got a lot of stuff now coming out on our WhatsApp page. We have a WhatsApp page, and actually we're starting to construct an Instagram page. I think we got rolling as well.
Okay.
So we're trying to make sure when the people them say, okay, we social media, the Bahamas Department of Meteorology now, we into that stage as well.
So we can find you guys in a lot of places.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, thank you so much, because we want to be able to encourage everyone to make sure follow these organizations. This is where you get that credible information, the things that you actually need to know, and you're not just following anything that just pops up in your WhatsApp, right? And so we want to thank you guys so much, Ms. Mitchell, Mr. Tynes. The time is just never enough. It's just never enough. But I appreciate the what I call the meat on the bone, the information that you guys would normally share with us to be able to help the community. So we're very grateful to have you. And of course, the invitation remains open for you to come once again. Listen, we are so happy to be able to bring this information to you from these organizations here within the city of Freeport. Please make sure that you're taking note of how you can find ways to get information from them, follow them on their social media handles, and make sure that you are informed with the right information. We still have a really good segment coming up for you. It has to do with business and how businesses can now be ready and prepared for hurricane season and the things that they can do. And I'm going to bring a lady back on the show who always comes with some really good information. So we'll be right back right after these messages.
Welcome to Freeport, the reawakened, the reimagined, the rebirth, the Renaissance capital of the Bahamas. Over $1.5 billion in investments. Marinas, cruise ports, downtown revitalization, residential developments. We're putting the city on the map. Want to know more? Just log on. Your future is only a click away.
Here at Variety World, we offer a variety of items such as grocery items, toiletry items, household items. We offer men's shoes and clothing, refreshments, seasoning, toiletries, anything you might need, we have here at Variety World. We also carry refreshments, beauty supplies, and snacks, and hot parties. And for your morning breaks, you can come for tea and hot coffee. We have it all your retail needs. You can come on here down at Variety World, and we have everything you might need. We are located in Britannia Rachel Mini Mall on Polaris Drive in the plaza behind Stop and Shop. And our telephone number is 802-0158.
Welcome back. We're here on Focus Forward, and we are on part 2 of our Hurricane Preparedness show, and we're so excited to get into the conversation. We spoke with the Disaster Risk Management Authority. We had the Meteorology Freeport office here with us, and of course the Grand Bahama Utility Company being able to share about what's happening within the city of Freeport, how they are preparing to support the community. But of course we cannot speak with everyone and not speak with the business development manager at the Grand Bahama Port Authority with responsibility for working and supporting with our local licensees and MSMEs and everybody that works within the city and in the business districts every day. And of course, we know that you guys totally support business growth, resilience, recovery efforts, and all of the things that these businesses need post a storm. But we've never heard about it, and we've never talked about it, right? And so we want to have that conversation today. So certainly a pleasure to have back joining us Mrs. Lashawn Dames, Business Development Manager. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Glendia, and it is always a pleasure to be in your company, and it's always a pleasure to talk about the services that the Grand Bahama Port Authority extends to its licensees, especially after a major crisis event like a storm.
Now, this is definitely a very interesting conversation because typically we always hear about the struggles that businesses have after the storm.
Right.
And if you don't have a business, a lot of times you're not thinking about the struggles that they do have and what it takes for them to be able to recover. So can you explain the role of the business assessment and recovery concierge service that supports these businesses immediately post a storm?
Okay, so that particular aspect of our support service is instrumental in helping us to organize the support that a business will need. And it helps us to identify where we are going to deploy resources first, right? So firstly, let me just give a shout out to Mrs. Deanne Seymour, our Chief Financial Officer, because she is the person that is usually instrumental in this process. We will have a team that goes out, and when I say literally goes out knocking door to door to each of the businesses throughout the different business districts. So whether you are in the industrial, well, not necessarily the major industrial sector, but the light industrial sector, in all of the tourism sectors, so out at Port Lucaya, out in the Seahorse Plaza, out in downtown along Coral Road, even down to the Caravel Beach areas, the Raven Mall, we are taking assessments from each of the businesses to find out primarily what was their damage, how severe was it, what type are they operational? What are their hours of operation? If it's been modified because of services not available right then. For example, if they may have had severe damage and they're having to go through a process to have the electricity restored, they're going to modify their operating hours accordingly. So the first part of what we do starts with the business assessment, and that is its priority, and it helps us to form how we deploy resources from that point.
So that's what I wanted to know. What is actually involved in this business assessment process? It sounds like a fancy name, right? But what is involved in the assessment process?
So the assessment is really asking every licensee how, what were your damages? Are you operational? Did you have insurance? If you had insurance, did you have sufficient insurance? Do you have electricity? Was there damages to your structure? So that assessment helps us to come back and formulate that data that will tell us how badly the business community was impacted by the storm. Case in point, post-Dorian, we can definitely say that more than 60% of our licensees did not have insurance. Up to 75%, while they may have had insurance as a whole, were underinsured. So they didn't have sufficient insurance, and that's a major fact.
It is.
It's a major factor in the recovery process. How quickly you are able to rebound really depends on not only the insurance that you have, but the access to capital to be able to rebuild, right?
And I think the access to capital is also a really big thing, right? Because when you talk about post-storm, the first thing you think about is, how can I fix? How can I recover?
Exactly.
And where is money coming from?
Where it coming from.
Exactly.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about funding opportunities then. If they're going through this business assessment process, the Port Authority and the licensing areas, Invest Grand Bahama Small Business Bureau, everybody wants to know, where are you at? What's going on? How are you fixed to fix yourself, right? What financial opportunities might there be for persons that actually need assistance?
Okay, so post the past two major storms, we formalized support services for licensing, and that can come. That can take many forms. So, for example, you may have suffered severe damages. So there may be, perhaps it may be a waiver on the license fees for that year. Maybe it is through discounts. We have done grant programs. In fact, post-Dorian, we did major grant programs awarding up to $3.5 million in support to licensees as well as Grand Bahama businesses. So we touch the length and breadth of Grand Bahama in the business community far and wide to offer support.
Up to $3.5 million.
Right.
I don't know if people know that.
And now understand that we did that in support with partners like Mercy Corps, like Bacardi, like the American Red Cross and the Bahamas Red Cross. We also did programs with the Bahamas Red Cross and the International Federation of Red Cross Society. So that's the international brand. And we were able to provide significant support, especially through the Red Cross program, the Small Business Recovery Grants. We were able to really touch the lives and impact the businesses of livelihood businesses, and that's your small businesses that solely rely on that business income to support their households. That was a tremendous program. That program created tremendous impact for them, and it was just it was amazing to watch how those businesses were able to rebound, because Grand Bahama, we have a resilient business community. We've gone through our highs and lows, and they were able to rebound really quickly, and for the most part up to 90-95% were within that first 3 months. They were reopened. So your convenience stores, your shoe stores, your mom and pop stores, they were up, they were open, they were running. They may have had modified hours, but they were up and they were going.
They were operational. Now, I could imagine, and when you look around town and you look within the city of Freeport right now, you can see a lot of new businesses. Businesses are popping up all over the place, right? And so I could imagine that those that would have been beneficiaries of what would have been done in the past in terms of the programs would know where to go to find out about these programs.
Right.
If, in the unfortunate event something happens. But what about the new businesses? Where can they go to find out about program details? What is the program? What do they need to qualify? Deadlines, etc. How can they find out?
Okay, so we have our Invest Grand Bahama website. We also have the gbpa.com website. We also have our social media pages. So we have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have LinkedIn, and so they can always stay tuned to our pages, because anything that we do is going to go out through one of those channels. And a key point that I want to emphasize is you always want to be connected to Mrs. Colebrook in the licensing area of customer relations. Make sure that your content, your information, your contact information, the email addresses, your phone number, both for the business itself as well as personal contacts, so that we can have access to e-blast you. Because the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to e-blast every opportunity that comes to the table. Right. We're going to post it on our social media pages to make sure that it's far and widespread, and it's far and widespread. and we're also going to utilize billboards. We're going to utilize WhatsApp. So to get in touch with us, you simply need to call 350-9000. You will be connected either to the Customer Relations Department, and they will share details. You can ask for the Business Development Department, and then, of course, the Invest Grand Bahama Small Business Bureau. That is what we are about. We are here to support the success of our licensees.
And that's really important. And you're talking about these programs and where they can learn about it. But let's talk about some other programs. Let's talk about post-storm training. Let's talk about educational opportunities. You know, businesses need to know more in order to be the best they can be at resilience.
Right.
So tell me, where can they find out about those kinds of programs, or how can they get in touch with programs that can help them to prepare for future events?
Okay, so throughout the city of Freeport, we are in the season now, and businesses can find an array of disaster management training that's happening. Through UB, through the Grand Bahama Chamber of Commerce, and through other organizations. The Grand Bahama Port Authority, through its bureau, will also host training. In fact, I'll put a plug in there that look out for our event flyer coming out for training in the month of July. But the training is out there, and we will e-blast to our licensee base and to our customer base. Between our customer base in terms of licensees, utilities, we have a very large customer base that we will e-blast that information to ensure that it gets as much coverage as possible. But once again, you can reach out to our Customer Relations Department, you can reach out to the Bureau, through business development, and we will make that information available. We will also, because sometimes we will offer the training in partnership with the Grand Bahama Chamber of Commerce or with other entities, but it is all about ensuring that we are preparing the businesses before, because you can only be as resilient as the planning that you've put in place.
Yes.
Any recovery measures that you need to help you move ahead faster or move forward faster. So don't wait until you hear the warnings. You want to be prepared before the warnings.
Right. And so, as you know, I work in the area of quality assurance.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And a big deal for us, particularly because where we are geographically located, we have to think about business continuity planning.
Absolutely.
And that is really, really important. What are some of the practical steps you think businesses can take to help them prepare for disruptions?
So first, you want to assess what your risks are, right? After the past two major events that we've had with Matthew and then again with Dorian, I think businesses have a good idea, especially after Dorian, in terms of where they're located, what types of damages they can anticipate, because I don't think anybody ever envisioned that we would have seen 3 feet of water in the downtown area. And so now you have a worst case scenario planning, right? So you want to make sure that you know what your risks are, where you're located, and the things that you can expect to experience. You want to know, one, if you're a business owner and you own the property, insurance is a must. It's difficult, but it is a must. You have to consider that, because you need to be able to insure the assets that get you operational, those revenue assets that make you viable post the event. If you don't own the building, then you want to be considering your content insurance, your inventory,
everything
the supplies,
right.
So you want to be thinking along the lines of insurance. You want to be thinking along the lines of your data, managing that, and cloud. Use of the cloud to secure that, because invoices, accounts, and all of those things, you want to be able to pull those things up at the click of a button, right? Then, of course, there is the most important aspect of your business, which is the people. Right? Don't ever forget the human element involved in this. And you want to be making sure that they are taking the necessary measures to protect their homes, their families, so that when business is up and running, they can now focus on the job that they do.
Yes.
But it's all of those components, and we will give guidance and training along all of those lines when we do our workshop sessions.
Perfect. Now that I have you here on the show, I want to talk a little bit about some of these benefits that the businesses can participate in and take part of through the Invest Grand Bahama Small Business Bureau. So there's Focus Forward, as you know, you guys sponsor us all the time.
Of course.
And we love to meet with the businesses.
Of course.
There's Business Segment of the Week, there's Buy Local, Shop at Home initiatives. Tell us about some of the things that they can benefit from, because I don't think they always know that they can do all of these things, and it's absolutely free if you are a GBPA licensee.
So participating in any of our initiatives is as simple as picking up the phone and giving us a call, and that can be done 350-9000. One of the key features is our business retention officer, Ms. Claudine Pinder. You can reach her at 350-9287. She's gonna get me for giving away a direct line, but you have access to her, and she is responsible to coordinate our Focus Forward features. She's responsible to coordinate our Business of the Week segments. Of course, you know, we have Buy Local, Shop at Home, and every major shopping holiday season we promote that. What are our local businesses doing? Because we want to get the word out on what it is that you do. Of course, coming toward at the end of the season, of the hurricane season, we're going into Flash Friday, starting from the end of November straight into December. And so you have these opportunities to really promote your business. Just send us the information, tell us what you're doing, and we will get you out there. We give you opportunities to come on Focus Forward with us. You get the opportunity to roll with us as we do our radio chit chats on the various radio stations. You get the opportunity to be featured in our Facebook promotions, our Instagram promotions. So there are tons of opportunity for you to get your business out there. Maybe you've had to change location. Maybe your hours of operating have changed. All of that, you have the opportunity to get the word out through
Free
features, and it's all free. That's the key point there. This is all free to GBPA licensees.
And let's be honest, advertisement is very expensive.
It is costly. So that's one load that we can help you to carry.
Right. So I know that we have to wrap up really quickly. I'm getting the signal, but is there anything that you would like for the businesses to remember coming from the the Grand Bahama Small Business Bureau during this hurricane preparedness time? What would that message be?
So plan before the warning. You need to have a plan of action in place. And whatever that plan is, when whatever the crisis is has passed, it's execution mode. Get into recovery mode. Understand where things are in your environment, because you may be providing a service, right, or a product, but your vendor is in the same area. You need to have your plan ready, and you need to have the execution strategy ready to go so that you're able to do the things that you need to. Document before, and so that you will have clean paperwork, good trail, so that you can make your claims faster. If there are grant programs available, we're going to be wanting to know what your damages were, what that cost looks like, what you need to recover. So you're going to need this type of information. So plan effectively, execute your strategy, document along the way to make sure that you have what you need in place to continue business as you were before.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mrs. Dames. We really appreciate having you here today.
Thank you for having us.
I know that there's so much more that
still
you
so much more.
But of course, you know, we can always make that a part too.
Yes.
Invest Grand Bahama will allow to do. You guys will allow us to do that. You know, they're gonna tap into the budget and call ZNS and say, hey, let's do it. So we're looking forward to having more opportunities to be able to engage with the Invest Grand Bahama Small Business Bureau and the Grand Bahama Port Authority. Of course, we know that the information is always helpful to the businesses, but we also know that the information is very helpful to entrepreneurs that are looking to become licensees. So we want to continue to make sure that the information is out there. So if you want to know more, 350-9000, call and ask to speak to Invest Grand Bahama. You can get some information from them or speak with the Customer Relations Department. We want to thank all of our guests for being on the show today. And of course, we want to thank our sponsors, Invest Grand Bahama, OMG Couture, Untangle Hair Studio, Creative Eyes Studio, Visible Changes, all of those folks. And Alex, we miss you. So we're hoping to be able to see you in the next show. Maybe next week we'll see Alex back. She's probably coming back from Korea or Japan or one of those other places. Thank you for inviting us into your businesses and your homes. Grand Bahama's Best Talk Show is always here for you. And until next time, I'm Glendia Sweeting, and we're informing you on the positive things that happen only when you focus forward.
You've been listening to Focus Forward, sponsored by Invest Grand Bahama. Like us on Facebook at Invest Grand Bahama Small Business Bureau to stay updated.
And drop a business card at the Grand Bahama Port Authority receptionist desk to have your business featured on our show. Tune in next Thursday,
Same time,
same place,
for Focus Forward.